The day after Richmond fell, Abraham Lincoln came to Richmond. He came to this house. General Weitzel says, "Mr. President, how should we treat these people?" And Lincoln says, "Let them up easy."
Richmond, Virginia was the capital of the Confederacy, and that's kind of hard to miss considering all of the monuments to Confederate war heroes throughout the city. It is very rare for the losing side of a war to have monuments.
Guess what else is real rare in world history? The whole way we ended the Civil War.
But those statues take on a really charged feeling for people.
We have a clash around memory and heritage and what it means with regard to the American Civil War.
Civil wars usually end with the losers going to the hangman's noose, the guillotine, to prison, to exile, or something. And in this case, they just went home.
In America today, almost half the country believes that the Civil War was about states' rights. But the historical record shows that the Civil War was about slavery. I talked to Waite Rawls, the former president of the Museum of the Confederacy, to get some answers.
Was slavery the principal cause of that political dispute? Yeah. There's no way to deny that. But to say Confederacy is synonymous with racist is to connote, and nobody else was, and they were all by themselves in that. 99% of the white people living in the United States in 1860 were racists, including Abraham Lincoln.
Initially, Lincoln was not in favor of giving blacks voting rights, or allowing them to hold office, or even intermarry with whites. Eventually, he did make incredible steps forward in terms of equal rights, like the 13th Amendment and the Freedmen's Bureau bill. But his main priority at the time was keeping the Union together. So he also pardoned all the Confederates and vetoed legislation banning slavery altogether. Back then, white supremacy was the nation's prevailing social order throughout all of the Union.
Another side of reconciling is we got to push those African Americans out of the way. They're in the way to the national reconciliation of the white North and the white South. That gives ground for a lost cause politically, which was we couldn't have been wrong, we simply must have been outnumbered.
The Lost Cause was a national propaganda campaign to misrepresent what the Civil War was actually about. The main tenets of the Lost Cause are that the Confederacy was fighting for states' rights, not slavery, that slaves had great working conditions, were loyal to their masters, and often fought for the Confederacy, portraying slave owners as kind and Southerners in general as more steeped in Christian values in order to make the case that they were fighting for a just cause and only lost because they were outnumbered.
It is a reflection of a need for Southerners to reconcile their grief over significant losses, the total disruption initially of their social order of white supremacy, whether you were slaveholding or not.
But how did we get to a point where a propaganda campaign became American history?
General Moore, at 99, follows the heroic dead of the South to a soldier's grave in Selma, Alabama, as the last tiny handful of the boys in gray prepares for the final Confederate reunion in Norfolk, Virginia.
The women who are most responsible for this did an extraordinary job.
A lot of the Lost Cause narratives can be traced back to funerals for Confederate soldiers and the women they left behind after the war. Women all over the South started creating memorial associations to collect the bodies of Confederate soldiers, properly bury them, and create monuments to their fallen heroes. One of the most prominent groups was the Confederate Memorial Literary Society.
They send out a call to prominent white women throughout the South and say, we have to preserve the legacy of our loved ones. And they open up what they call the Confederate Museum, and it is a hit.
It was a shrine. It was a shrine to the Confederacy.
Each room of the house was set up with these artifacts from each of the Confederate states. But it's only their story. If black folk are represented, it's because they are the loyal, loving slaves, supposedly.
One of the underrepresented stories of the American Civil War is the U.S. colored troops. At the end of the war, there were more black men in blue uniforms than white men in gray uniforms. People need to know that.
We have completely removed black people from the narrative when they were central to it.
The Lost Cause made its way into popular culture through films like Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind.
The Confederacy needs it, so we's gonna dig for the South. Don't worry, we'll stop them Yankees.
Goodbye, Big Sam. Goodbye, boys. Plenty of you.
And eventually found its way into school textbooks and even legislation.
This group has nothing to do with discrimination that Congress prohibits, nor do they advocate radical...
1910, they make the decision that, hey, no more textbooks that speak ill of the Confederacy. And that persists until today in some places.
In 2018, Christie and Waite decided to merge their museums to provide a more accurate picture of the Civil War from multiple perspectives.
What you want is for people to form their own perspective fully informed.
What's the harm in people not knowing the lost cause?
The harm comes when there is a disrespect for dignity of life that becomes sort of generational because it's grounded in a series of lies. The history has never been about the dead people, really. It's always about us and the moment that we're in and the issues we're trying to contemplate and wanting to understand sort of this connective tissue. It's always been that.
Do you feel like Richmond is going through its own sort of truth and reconciliation process through these challenging discourses, disagreements, and representations of the city?
I think Richmond is going through a period of awakening. The only way that you really can come to some form of conciliatory behavior is when everybody finally understands it and has a desire to move forward in a more equitable way. This is what we do in museums. The challenge is helping people build new memories so they can create a more accurate heritage.
The American experiment was a huge advance into something very, very new. And they called it an experiment all the time. We need to continue calling it an experiment, which means that it can get better if we keep working at it.